Good, good. First question, this will be for all, even though it was asked by someone from one particular ward, I think it's a good question for everybody to have. What would you support cutting from the city budget? Please be specific if you have some ideas.
First of all, I do not necessarily agree with some of not my opponents, but some of the people running for election.
You stand up, so.
To my immediate right, that the current city council has been fiscally responsible. I do not believe that the current city council, which includes me, has been a taxi spendy group. I've said that publicly, so let me say it again. You have to bear in mind that the vast majority of the budget of any municipality like ours is in personnel. Yes, we can cut out paper clips, and yes, we can cut out subscriptions to magazines and professional development conferences, but at the end of the day, the vast majority of our budget is and always will be people in jobs. Now, we can only cut so many leaf cutters. I believe we've already contracted out our janitorial services at City Hall. But you have to bear in mind, folks, and again, I'm not advocating an increase in taxes, but if we're going to cut further and more deeply into the budget, in my limited understanding, it means that people are going to potentially lose their jobs. And as I believe one of the people on the stage have already indicated, we've cut a lot of service jobs, maybe a lot of ASME employees. Well, if we're going to cut deeply into the budget, I'm afraid our public safety may be at risk. Again, I'm not advocating raising taxes to avoid that, and there may be things to do, but let's be clear. The vast majority of our budget always has been and always will be people. If we're going to cut that heavily, we're going to have to cut people, which means there'll be fewer things that will be done for us as citizens.
Thank you. Next, same question. Give your name first, that'll help.
Kristen Lash, Ward 3. I actually brought an invoice from the Daily Policy Group, who charged $6,000 in January for lobbying services. I have heard a lot of people when I go door to door asking about the city's lobbyists, and we pay $6,000 to this lobbyist after a State of the Union address in which the president said he would veto any earmarks. And that's what a lobbyist does, is they lobby for earmarks. This is the monthly report we get from that lobbyist. This is actually one of the longer ones I've seen. The entire first paragraph, the most of this report, is a recap of what President Obama said in the State of the Union address. The second paragraph, which I'd like to read, if that's okay. Daily Policy Group met with several of the new members to discuss the future of discretionary spending and the competitive grant process. In various briefings, DPG advocated for a transparent grant process and reminded the new members of how political the grant process has been in the past. That was the entirety of what we got, of what this lobbyist did in that month. So I'd like to question why we're paying someone over $72,000 a year to lobby when they're not even, not only is this all we're getting, but they're not even lobbying just specifically for DeKalb. They have clients all over the area that they go and lobby on behalf of. So as an alternative to that, I know that we need to keep up with legislation that's going on at the federal and state levels. I know there's one alternative that is less per year than what we pay this group per month, that keeps the city informed on what is going on at the federal level, and then encourages the mayors and the council members to lobby on their own behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Monica O'Leary, and I also agree with Christian Lash about the $72,000 we spend out a year for the lobbyists. But I also agree with Christian Lash about the $72,000 we spend out a year for the lobbyists for Ms. Daly. But I also think that for something more specific, if we will start at the top of the budget and begin to ask each department to give back into the budget of 5% to balance our budget. Thank you.
Next, and same question, just give us your name first.
Paulette Sherman, 3rd Ward. You know, one of the things that I've gone through the budget, I've read through it several times, it's completely marked up, and I think it's untrue that there are no further cuts that can be made. Again, the $72,000 a year spent on Washington lobbyists is a big one. Another thing that I've talked heavily about in my campaign is the DeKalb Taylor Municipal Airport. There's quite a bit of city monies that are directed that way, and there's a number of alternatives that we could look into to remove that burden from simply the taxpayers' shoulders in the city of DeKalb, and one of them would be regionalizing it so that it's not just the city of DeKalb that's paying to keep that open, because it is important in order to attract industrial companies out this way. And so there's another area where I definitely think cuts can be made. You know, if you look through the budget under dues and subscriptions, just for the city council and mayor, that's budgeted at $20,000 a year. There's every single department has its own dues and subscriptions line item, and I think if you totaled those up, that's actually a pretty significant savings that could be had there if we were to, you know, possibly decide which ones are really important and are really being helpful to the city, and which ones we could probably go without during tough economic times. There are dozens of examples of things like that where you can absolutely be more fiscally responsible, and you can make cuts that have nothing to do with laying personnel off. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, same question. Ron Gacy.
Yes, Ron Naylor, 5th Ward. Haven't been on the council now for almost 4 years. Many reductions, staff reductions, cost reductions have been undertaken by the current city council, and a lot of them as a result of many very difficult decisions, tough decisions, priorities. You have to set your priorities up there. And definitely the public safety area is one of those high priorities. With a budget at about 85–86% personnel, it's very difficult to make any significant reductions without affecting personnel. Over the past 3–4 years, city staff has been reduced by about 20%, or even maybe a little greater, and the budget has been basically maintained at about $28 million, despite the increase in cost and the increase in personnel out there. That's been no small task in being able to accomplish that. There are many areas out there I do believe that still could be addressed in further looking at possible cost savings out there, particularly in the way of the retirement programs, health insurance programs, workman's compensation programs, some of the very costly programs that are out there. We need a lot of help in those areas, particularly from our state legislature down in Springfield, to be able to really make any significant impacts in those areas. Also, there's many other thoughts out there with regards of looking at some consolidation, as was mentioned here, regionalization of the airport, many other cost savings that probably haven't really been touched upon yet, but I'm certain they will be in the coming years here. We have to, because the revenue is very definitely stagnated, stalemated, is not there anymore, but our expenses are remaining, and if we want to maintain our public safety services, we're going to have to make some very difficult decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead and give us your name and candidacy. Ward.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Robert Fisher, 5th Ward Alderman candidate once again. One of the dangers of going last is I was actually afraid that everybody was going to get to all of the good points before I did. And believe it or not, just to give you an idea of how many things you still can cut in the budget, I actually have one that nobody got to. One of the administrative departments spent $11,000 on personnel recruitment. And the first thing that goes off in my head, as somebody who, again, manages a sales territory, why wouldn't I just put an ad on Craigslist for free? Now just think about that. Something you and I can probably do in our own houses every day, we could do for free or next to free. We spent $11,000 in an economy where unemployment is at 10%, and we decided to go ahead and spend $11,000. It doesn't seem like a lot of money, and maybe in the overall scheme of things, it's not. But if you take one little example like that and add it up, it gets to be one of the many parts of the budget you can cut. Now, as I was collecting signatures for my campaign, one of the things people told me was a priority is safety. People want to feel safe. You can cut things in the budget without compromising police or fire. I'd like to take a look at privatizing the airport if at all possible. Now, I know that the city has received grants, which may make that difficult, but maybe we look and see if that's worth paying back those grants so we can actually begin the process of seeing if we can privatize the airport. I'd like to look at cost sharings with other municipalities to see what works and what doesn't. Perhaps there's some services we can share with neighboring communities and ease the burden on the taxpayers even more. Again, government needs to be run like a business. People want to feel safe, we can keep that a priority, but at the same time, cut a lot of the little things like magazine subscriptions and possibly put on hiatus things like an expanded economic development department when we have the DeKalb County Economic Bureau working for us already. Thank you.